been a lot of confusion and misinformation going on around about DirectX 12, so I thought I'd clear up some misconceptions and overall get you an idea of what you can expect. I mean, what does it do? Is it the future? Stuff like that. Basically, if you're not familiar with DirectX 12, it's what you call a graphics API, which is basically software that programmers use to basically display the stuff on screen for you to play. So what are the advantages of DirectX 12 over its predecessor, DirectX 11? Well, it's a more efficient graphics API that reduces CPU overhead. Basically, what this means is it's more efficient at what it does, so your processor doesn't have to do as much. So it saves it some, processor time to do other tasks like AI or physics and stuff like that. So that already improves performance. Additionally, it can execute draw calls across multiple cores. What this means is every time that the game wants to draw an object like a tree or your character or his cape or something, it has to send a draw call to the graphics card using the CPU. Now, if there's too many of them, you'll start getting low frame rates and your CPU will bottleneck you. With DirectX 11, it's limited to only one core at a time being able to do this task. And nowadays, we're seeing processors with 4, 6, or even 8 cores. So a lot of these aren't even being used. With DirectX 12, it can use multiple of them at a time, which means just overall better performance. And in addition, it also has better support for multi-graphics card setups using a feature called tiled rendering. And basically what it does is it will split a screen into essentially tiles, like maybe split it in half across the middle or 1/4 of each screen, and each video card will be in charge of that tile. Now, you won't get quite as high frame rates as the old method, which is basically one graphics card draws one frame and then the other one draws the next frame, but there'll be less input lag with this method, and it opens up a lot of opportunities. So there's a lot of potential with that. And in addition, there's also the possibility that you may be able to use your integrated graphics alongside the discrete graphics card. So this might give you a couple extra frames per second, which kind of makes you feel better about the integrated graphics in your processor that might not even be being used. This is a graph of the 3D Mark demo that tests how many draw calls per second that can be done. Done with an i5-2500K and a GTX 970. So this is a synthetic benchmark. You'll see with DirectX 11, it's quite lower than DirectX 12. Multi-threading helps a little, but not much because it's mostly limited to one core. But you see a massive jump in the amount of draw calls that DirectX 12 can do. So it makes quite the difference. Now, you won't see this kind of boost of frame rate in games. This is just the effectiveness of draw calls. You'll see that the best way of kind of telling how much of a benefit DirectX 12 will provide to a game is to look at Mantle. Mantle is very similar. The only difference is that DirectX 12 is proprietary to Windows 10 rather than multiple operating systems, and it's not proprietary to AMD. Now, another feature that DirectX 12 provides is there's a variety of new graphics features that they can do, kind of like when DirectX 11 came out, that basically makes things prettier. Now, the improved draw calls, which overall improve performance and frame rates in games, is available on most of the newer graphics cards, being the AMD Radeon 7000 series and newer, and the NVIDIA GTX 400 series and newer. So that is available to most people with a modern system. Now, the newer features, which are too complicated to really go into in a simple video, are only available on newer graphics cards, such as the NVIDIA GTX 900 or the AMD Radeon 300 series, R9. Now, there's no card on the market that actually supports all of the features. So people are saying, oh, the GTX 900 has full support, or the AMD 300 is the only one with full support. Neither of them have full support, because some of them have features that the other doesn't support at this time. Now, future graphics cards will probably add support for that, but currently, if you want every feature for DirectX 12, You can't get all of it with the current graphics cards on the market. And if you're wondering what we can expect, there's a lot more to games than draw calls. Now, this improves draw calls, which are really important for stuff with a lot of objects, such as MMORPGs. If it's a lot to draw on screen, and then because there's a lot more to this that the CPU has to do than draw calls. AI, physics, game logic, updating the UI, just all kinds of things besides that. But this does reduce the CPU load and helps distribute it better. So you will see better frame rates in CPU-bound games. Not as much in GPU-bound games, maybe a little bit. And another thing you have to keep in mind is DirectX12 isn't going to magically fix the existing games. Developers will have to recode their games in DirectX12. This coming out won't just retroactively fix old games. Developers will have to put in an effort to do that. And even with DirectX12, and it does help performance if implemented right, the developers still need to code their game really well to take advantage of it. I mean, if they're lazy and they just throw everything onto the main thread and everything's being done on one core, the game will still perform very badly. So they'll need to work on that. So overall, it's very nice, a Windows 10 exclusive graphics API that will hopefully see frame rate improvements of up to 50 to 100% depending on the game. Some less, you might only see 10, 20%. It really depends on the game. You won't see actual improvements like this in terms of frame rate to the scale of 5 to 10 times, simply because there's so much more to a game than draw calls, but it will certainly help a little bit. Basically, it's very effective at improving performance, but it really depends on the game and how the developer implements it and whatnot. Feel free to leave a comment. I'll try to answer them if there's any confusion or questions I haven't answered, and thanks for watching.